The click of her wedding band against the base of a wine glass was soft, but final. Callie didn't blink. The sunset spilling across the coastal view behind her didn't move her either. She sat barefoot in a $120 million mansion, hair still. Pinned from 2 nights ago, her body still wrapped in silence Daxton left behind. She didn't know what time it was. She only knew it was too late for him to be in meetings, too early for international time zones. The maid entered quietly with a sealed manila envelope. Callie didn't turn. "It's done," the maid said. "They're ready to close. All that's left is the confirmation call." Callie nodded once. "Have you ever waited in a place that doesn't feel like yours, even when your name's on the title? Have you ever been married to someone who made you feel like a guest in your own life? Because that's where she was, not with bruises or yelling, but with silence, absences, and closed-door whispers. Her husband had another woman, and not a secret one, not anymore. The question now wasn't why he did it. It was why she ever stayed. Because this time, she wasn't waiting for love. She was waiting for the call that confirmed her escape was legal. And when that call came, everything would change. Callie Martin hadn't cried since the gala. Not when she saw Daxton's fingers laced with another woman's. Not when she heard someone call that woman his wife. Not even when she packed her things and left her wedding ring in the center of their marble counter, next to a sealed envelope of their wedding photos from Italy. But now, sitting here, she realized how done she was. Daxton never came home. She wasn't surprised. The lie had been slow, not sudden. The betrayal, quiet. He had been drifting for months. Callie just hadn't moved until now. She sipped the last of her wine and let her eyes settle on the still life of her marriage. Curated furniture, untouched candles, and polished floors no one danced on. Her phone vibrated on the coffee table. One word. Confirmed. It was from her real estate attorney. The mansion was no longer hers. It belonged to an international buyer who'd never heard of Daxton's name and didn't care. The money was already in escrow. The legal transfer finalized. The estate had been Daxton's idea. He'd placed it in her name for tax reasons, and now it was her final statement. She stood slowly and let the cool floor kiss her bare feet. Everything she wore was simple: grey cashmere pants, a loose white shirt. She looked like a woman mourning something invisible. And, in a way, she was. Lake Como smelled like lavender and wood smoke the day Callie married Daxton. There had been no family, no friends, just a small dock, a private officiant, and a single photographer who signed a non-disclosure agreement so tight it might as well have been federal. Callie wore a soft lace gown she'd sewn herself. Her hair was pinned up with her grandmother's comb. Daxton wore a tailored grey suit, no tie, and a quiet smile. "I don't want the world to know yet," he had said. "Let's keep this ours, private, sacred." Callie, raised by her aunt in a sleepy Vermont town, didn't question it. She believed people like Daxton, men who built billion-dollar empires, deserved a different kind of privacy. She believed he loved her. After the vows, they had kissed under the quiet sky. She'd felt safe. But in hindsight, it hadn't been safety. It had been secrecy. They returned from Italy and moved straight into the estate on the Pacific coast, a mansion Daxton had already furnished. The house had 21 rooms, but never echoed with laughter. The first red flag came early, her boutique's opening in New York. She had invited him. He said he had a conflict. She stood in the spotlight alone. When reporters asked about her personal life, she smiled softly and said, "I like to keep things quiet." Quiet had become her entire personality. She was his secret wife. No one knew. No photos. No announcements. He said he was protecting her from the media. But the real question wasn't who he was protecting. It was what. The bottle of wine was empty. Her suitcase stood by the stairs. The ring no longer touched her finger. She placed it inside a small crystal dish on the kitchen island. It looked oddly beautiful there, like a sculpture of something once warm, now frozen. She opened the refrigerator and left 2 untouched meals on the counter. Daxton always hated leftovers. It didn't matter. She stepped out onto the back patio, the ocean air brushing her skin. The vineyard rolled into the distance. She remembered walking through it with him once, barefoot and laughing. That memory felt like it belonged to someone else now. Her phone vibrated again. Unknown number. She didn't answer. A voicemail dropped. She played it. "Callie, it's me. I'm at the airport. Just landed. There's traffic, but I'll be home soon." She didn't react. He still thought it was home. She walked back into the kitchen and placed a final envelope next to the ring. Inside were copies of the deed transfer, the sale notice, and a handwritten note. "You could have chosen truth. You chose a lie. I chose freedom." Then she turned off the lights, stepped out, pulled her hoodie over her head. The house wasn't hers anymore. Neither was he. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel small walking away. She felt done. They met on a Thursday. He walked into her boutique like he had all the time in the world. Callie had just finished fixing a loose zipper on a sample dress when she saw him by the scarf rack. He wasn't browsing like a tourist. He was watching, eyes sharp, suited, still, like he'd already seen something he wanted and was waiting for it to come closer. He picked up a silk tie, ran his fingers over the edge, and asked, "You made this?" She didn't smile, not fully. "No, but I made that scarf behind it. The one with the uneven hem." He tilted his head. "It's not uneven, it's intentional. Still a flaw. Or maybe that's what makes it personal." She raised a brow. Most men with shoes like his talked in polished sentences. But this one talked like he was searching for something. He bought the scarf, paid in cash, and as he handed it back for packaging, he said, "I'll be back tomorrow. Same time. Would you still be here?" She nodded, unsure why she'd said yes so easily. And the next day, he came back. Then again, then again. By the end of the second week, he brought her a cup of coffee with oat milk and said, "I think we should go somewhere quiet." She laughed. "That's your line. I don't use lines." She said no, but the next week she said yes. They didn't go anywhere flashy. A bookstore cafe in Soho, a rooftop with no name, a small jazz bar in Harlem where the owner knew him by a nickname she never heard again. Daxton didn't talk about his job. Not at first. He said he worked in finance, but never gave details. He listened more than he spoke, asking about her childhood, her designs, her fear of being seen but not known. "You don't strike me as the kind of woman who wants to be saved," he once told her. "I don't want to be saved," she replied. "I want to be seen." And in the early months, he did see her, or he made her believe he did. She found herself falling faster than she expected. The man was quiet, controlled, always knowing when to lean in and when to disappear just enough to keep her wanting more. But there were signs. He always picked her up in rented cars. His number never showed a last name. He didn't follow her boutique's page. When someone asked for a picture at a restaurant, he declined with a smile and whispered, "Privacy is power." She didn't push. She thought mystery was part of who he was. The world saw her as a rising boutique designer. He saw her as something private, special. And when he invited her to Lake Como with 3 days' notice, she didn't pack lightly. She packed with the feeling that her life was about to change. It did. They married with no announcements, no audience, just 2 signatures, 1 kiss, and a vow, he whispered low in her ear. "You're mine. This is forever." She said the same. They flew back to New York that night, and by the next morning he had already started putting together the paperwork for their estate in California. "You'll love the ocean view," he said. "It's where we'll build something that's only ours." She didn't ask why he wanted it in her name. He called it cleaner. He said, "In my world, people dig through records just to find cracks. This way, no one gets in." She believed him. He didn't wear a ring. "The media would notice," he explained. "You'll get attention you didn't ask for." But he kissed her like he meant every inch of it. And when they arrived at the mansion, a modern palace with sliding glass walls, stone, staircases, and a vineyard behind it, he said, "Welcome home, Mrs. Maddox." He didn't use the name again, and neither did anyone else. The first month was dreamy. The second was quieter. The third, she realized, he hadn't posted anything with her. Hadn't told his colleagues. Didn't correct anyone when they called her his friend or girlfriend. He traveled often. The kind of trips with no firm return dates. Always work-related. Always fast departures. When she confronted him once, early on, he cupped her face and said, "You know what we have. Don't let noise make you doubt it." She nodded. But something inside her stayed uneasy. She spent days setting up her boutique's West Coast pop-up. Nights alone in the house. Staff referred to her as Miss Callie. Not Mrs., not Ma'am. Just Miss. She mentioned it once. He laughed. "They're formal. I've had them for years. Don't take it personally." She tried not to. She tried to be graceful, respectful, trusting. But trust isn't built in silence. It's built in presence. And Daxton was hardly ever there. Months passed. She tried to fill the quiet with purpose. She poured herself into the business, designed more pieces, expanded her client list. She didn't want to rely on him, not financially, not emotionally. He noticed once, "You're always working now." She looked at him. "So are you." He didn't answer. The turning point wasn't dramatic. It was an iPad notification. He'd left it on the coffee table. It buzzed during one of his rare weekend stays at home. The screen lit up with a reservation confirmation for a luxury resort in Turks and Caicos. His name, a suite, for 4 nights. Same week he told her he'd be in Singapore. Her heart didn't race. Her hands didn't shake. She simply took a screenshot, saved it, then deleted it. She didn't bring it up, because at that moment, she wasn't trying to confront. She was preparing to leave. The day of the gala arrived. She dressed in the burgundy silk gown he once complimented, hair styled softly, eyes lined with warmth she didn't feel. She didn't go expecting anything, except distance. She just wanted to make an appearance, support her brand, and leave quietly. But life had other plans. She entered the ballroom alone. And there he was, Daxton, smiling, laughing, standing beside a woman in an emerald dress, her hand resting gently on his chest. Someone nearby whispered, "That's his wife, right? She's so elegant." Callie didn't blink. She didn't flinch. She didn't cry. She simply turned around and walked out before anyone could see her break. She went home and began packing. By morning, she had made 3 calls, one to her lawyer, one to a realtor, one to herself, silent, firm, final. He had married her in secret. He'd made her a placeholder. Now, she would become the ending, not with screaming, but with action. The vineyard didn't look the same in the morning. It looked too perfect, too trimmed, too staged. Callie stood at the edge of it, suitcase by her side, hoodie zipped up halfway. The morning air hit her skin, cooler than she expected. She hadn't slept, but her mind felt clearer than it had in weeks. She turned around and took one last look at the house. It was no longer hers, not in feeling, not in fact. Last night, she'd signed the final set of closing documents. Her real estate attorney had walked her through everything step by step. The buyer was ready. The wire was done. All that remained was to leave the keys in a white envelope at the front desk of her own gatehouse. She hadn't told anyone. Not the house staff. Not her assistant. Not Daxton. Especially not Daxton. The same man who had once said, "I don't want noise in our life," had built an empire on secrets. Now she had created one of her own. Only hers wasn't about shame. It was about escape. The first person she texted after the sale wasn't a friend. She didn't have many left. Her life had become too curated, too quiet, too distant for friendships that stayed. She texted Lena. Lena was the interior designer who once bought her first full collection for a celebrity townhouse project. The two had bonded over fabric choices and glass of wine brainstorms. Months ago, Lena had casually said, "If you ever want out, I have a client overseas who's obsessed with ocean views and modern symmetry. Keep that in your back pocket." Callie had laughed. But she hadn't forgotten. She messaged her with a simple sentence. "Does your client still want oceanfront?" The reply came instantly. "Yes. Budget up to 150. Needs privacy. What do you have?" She sent a video. Just a slow pan of the estate at dusk. No narration. No details. Lena responded with a name, a firm offer, and a time frame. "He'll close this week. Wire ready." That was 48 hours ago. She didn't empty the closets. She didn't erase her presence. She left her closet half full, drawers neat, jewelry tucked in travel cases. The rest would be boxed and shipped later to a private P.O. box in Los Angeles. She took only one framed photo, the one of her and her aunt from her boutique launch in New York. That photo mattered more than all the staged portraits Daxton's photographer ever took. In the center of the kitchen island, she placed the sealed envelope again, heavier now. It held everything he'd forgotten: their wedding photos, the original deed papers, her handwritten letter, and the ring, still shining, still silent. She walked out the front door and closed it behind her without flinching. Then she walked to the gatehouse, handed the envelope to the guard, and gave a single instruction. "Deliver this to Mr. Maddox when he arrives." The man blinked. "He's not back yet." "No," she said softly. "But I won't be here when he is." It was almost noon when she reached the temporary condo in Westwood. Lena had arranged it. It wasn't luxury. It was smart, clean, quiet, hers. The walls were plain. The sofa creaked slightly. The bedroom window faced a row of old trees instead of the ocean. She felt safe. She turned off her phone for the first time in days. Then she made tea. Not the kind Daxton used to like. No matcha, no imported leaves. Just a cheap peppermint blend from a box she picked up at a corner store. She sat on the floor and smiled. That evening, Lena stopped by with takeout and a bottle of wine. "You look 10 pounds lighter," Lena said. "Stress is heavy," Callie replied. Lena glanced around. "You sure you're good in this place?" "I'm not here for comfort," Callie said. "I'm here to be alone, on purpose." Lena raised her glass. "To starting over," Callie clinked hers gently. "To walking out before they think you're bluffing." They ate quietly for a few minutes. Then Lena leaned in. "He's going to flip." Callie didn't respond. Lena pressed on. "He'll either beg or explode. Are you ready for either?" "I'm not waiting for anything from him," Callie said. "Not even closure." Callie met her eyes. The sale was the closure. The next morning, her phone buzzed back to life. 27 missed calls, all from Daxton. She didn't open the voicemails. She didn't need to hear excuses dressed up in polished tones. She'd heard enough of those already. Instead, she opened her boutique's dashboard and reviewed the soft launch numbers for her LA expansion. Orders were coming in. A few influencers had already tagged the new line. There was no mention of Daxton, no connection. She liked that. The only name trending next to hers was hers. Later that week, she took a walk through the fashion district. No security, no luxury car idling at the curb. Just Callie in a black coat, sneakers, and a notebook under her arm. She entered a vacant property she'd been eyeing for months. The lease was clean, the zoning perfect, the foot traffic ideal. The agent handed her the keys. "You're officially the owner of the block's crown jewel." She smiled. Not bad for someone who just walked out of a castle. By nightfall, Daxton finally found her number. The text was short. "We need to talk. Please." She stared at the screen for a moment, then powered the phone down again. The Rolls-Royce pulled into the circular driveway just after midnight. Daxton stepped out, jaw clenched, phone in hand. He hadn't spoken since the plane touched down. His assistant had tried to call twice. He ignored both. He was supposed to be in New York for another 2 nights. But the voicemail from the estate guard shook him. "She said you'd be back. She said to give you this." Callie. She was always precise with words, always calm. When she said she wouldn't be there, she meant it. The envelope he received was thick, legal weight paper, taped clean across the flap. He hadn't opened it yet. He didn't want to. Not because he feared what it said, but because deep down, he knew what it meant. He walked into the mansion like a stranger. No lights, no music, no scent of lavender. He dropped his bag by the door, called out once. "Callie." Silence. He moved through the kitchen. The stove light was on, soft and gold. On the island sat the envelope and the ring. He didn't reach for them. Not yet. He walked further into the house. Nothing had been touched, and yet everything felt different. He noticed the missing heels by the stair rail, the coat that usually hung near the back door. Gone. The closet in their bedroom was half empty. Not a mess. Not a purge. Just removed. She didn't leave in anger. She left like someone who had planned their exit quietly and with full control. He returned to the kitchen, picked up the envelope, sat at the counter. First, the deed transfer, then the sale agreement, then the wire confirmation, and finally, her note. You could have chosen truth. You chose a lie. I chose freedom. He stared at those 3 lines for several minutes. His first instinct was denial. She'd overreacted. She was emotional. She didn't understand the complications of his world. But that voice in his head was old and tired, because the truth was simple. She hadn't just walked out. She had outplayed him, silently, without threats, without damage, just presence, and then absence, and that somehow hurt more. He called her. No answer. Called again. Nothing. He dialed her boutique's private line. Disconnected. He tried her assistant. Straight to voicemail. It wasn't until he contacted her lawyer, the one who notarized the mansion sale, that he got clarity. The sale was clean, sir. She had full ownership. You placed the property in her name months ago. She executed the sale without delay. Buyer's funds cleared escrow. Title transferred. You let her sell it? She didn't need my permission. She didn't need yours either. Click. He stood in the living room with the documents still in hand. The woman he married in secret had just sold the home he thought would silence her, and he hadn't even seen it coming. He tried to piece together when it started unraveling. Was it the Turks and Caicos trip? No, probably before that. Was it the gala? Yes, definitely. He hadn't expected her there. He didn't see her. Or maybe he did. Maybe she was in the corner, eyes like steel, watching him pretend to be someone else's. The woman in the emerald dress had called herself his future, but she wasn't. She didn't know about Callie, and now she didn't want to know about Daxton either, because by morning the mansion wasn't the only thing he'd lost. A message from her boutique investor popped up on his email thread the next morning. It wasn't addressed to him directly, but it was forwarded from a shared contact. Subject line, she's locked in her Westwood location. Quiet strength. Media will love it. Daxton clicked the link attached. There she was. Callie, on the sidewalk outside a clean glass-front boutique with bold lettering that said, Callie Martin, Los Angeles. Her full name. No hiding, no softness. Just her, standing alone. Not in shadows. Not behind anyone. He zoomed in. She was smiling. And that broke something in him. He tried calling her one last time that evening. Left a voicemail. Callie, I messed up. I know that now. You're not answering, and I don't blame you. I never should have asked you to hide. I never should have made you feel like a backup plan. I thought I was protecting something, but all I did was bury it. You deserved better. Please, talk to me. He hung up. He didn't call again, because deep down, he knew. She wasn't coming back, and the silence was no longer something she endured. It was something she owned. Sometimes silence speaks louder than confrontation. Have you ever walked away without saying a word, because the message was already clear? Drop a comment, like if you've ever been the one who left first. And don't forget to subscribe to Mr. Charles Stories for more true-to-life lessons and unforgettable endings. The new boutique opened quietly. No red ribbon, no champagne, no influencer overload. Just an early morning soft launch, fresh white signage, and the quiet pride of a woman who'd been underestimated too many times. Callie arrived at the storefront an hour before the first customer. She wore wide-leg jeans, a crisp white tee, and black flats. No one recognized her. Not yet. Inside, the air smelled of new wood and eucalyptus candles. The glass shelves reflected her latest collection. Sharp lines, soft fabrics, elegance with a backbone. Every label read Callie Martin in clean script. No logos, no gimmicks. Her staff buzzed with quiet energy. A small team, 5 women and 1 man, all hand-picked. Some from her original New York space, others local hires who believed in the work before it became fashionable. This wasn't a comeback. This was a reintroduction. At 10 a.m. sharp, the first customer walked in. Then another and another. By noon, the store was full. Women tried on jackets and dresses. Teenagers posed for photos. One older woman whispered, "It's like everything here fits who I used to be and who I want to be again." Callie smiled. Not every piece sold that day, but that wasn't the point. This space wasn't about numbers. It was about presence. It was about Callie choosing herself, publicly, proudly, and without apology. The local paper reached out for a quote after a walk-by editor spotted the launch. Her team wanted to pitch a soft press angle, from Vermont to Vogue, but Callie had a better idea. She called the reporter herself. No PR filter, no manager in between. When the woman asked why now, why LA, why this moment, Callie answered without hesitation. "Because I stopped waiting for someone else to claim me. I figured it was time I claimed myself." The article ran the next morning. The woman behind the quiet brand that's making loud moves. A full-page spread. Her face on the front. Minimal makeup. Her own clothes. Direct gaze. There was no mention of Daxton. No reference to the mansion. She didn't need it. But Daxton saw it, and that was enough. He stared at the paper in his Manhattan penthouse, phone buzzing with messages he ignored. He couldn't stop looking at her photo, the way she looked straight into the lens, not cold, not smug, just sure. He knew that look. He'd seen it once, at the boutique in Soho the first day they met, when she told him the hem was flawed and didn't flinch when he called it personal. That look haunted him now, because he didn't have access to it anymore. He searched her new store online, searched the collection. Each piece sold out within 48 hours. The new investor backing her had ties to half the industry, and she hadn't taken $1 from him, not even the account he once linked to her black card. She was building without him, thoroughly, beautifully, dangerously. Meanwhile, Callie moved with intention. She met quietly with her investor, reviewed growth reports, picked materials for the fall line, planned a capsule collaboration with a women's shelter she'd supported for years, now publicly. But she didn't speak of Daxton, not in interviews, not in meetings, not even in private. She had closed that chapter. And the weight of it was finally off her shoulders. Late one afternoon, after finalizing a shipment schedule, she took a long walk along Melrose. She ducked into a coffee shop she hadn't been to before. As she waited for her order, someone approached slowly. Tall, soft eyes, faded denim shirt and work-worn hands. "Didn't expect to see you again so soon," he said. It was Ellis, the man from the fundraiser. She smiled. "You were the one with the tulip." He grinned. "Guilty." She nodded at the seat beside her. "Sit." He did. No pretense, no pressure. They talked for 20 minutes, then 40. He asked about her boutique. She asked about his work in Foster Logistics. When she said she liked the quiet pace of her new chapter, he said something she hadn't expected. "Peace looks good on you." She didn't deflect. She just smiled, and when he walked her back to her car, he didn't ask for a next date. He simply said, "If you ever want coffee again, same spot, same time." Then he walked away. No chase, no game, just interest. And space, exactly what she needed. The second time Daxton saw her face again, it was on a digital billboard outside LAX. Callie Martin, West Coast designer to watch. 3 cities, 1 voice, no noise. He'd been heading to a meeting with a media partner when the car slowed in traffic. There it was, her face, larger than life, smiling against a soft cream background, hair tucked behind her ears, effortless, poised, visible. He blinked hard. The woman he'd once hidden from the world was now being projected across the city skyline. He hated how that made his stomach twist. Daxton didn't want to admit it, but he missed control. With Callie, everything had once been simple. She asked for nothing. She waited when he disappeared. She didn't demand red carpets or press releases. She loved in quiet, safe ways. He thought that was convenience. Now he realized it was loyalty, and he threw it away. So he made a move. He texted, "Congratulations. The billboard looks great. I'm in LA for a few days. Coffee?" Delivered. Read. No reply. 3 days passed. He drove past her boutique twice but didn't go in. He wasn't sure if she'd throw him out, or worse, ignore him. On the 4th day, he sent flowers, white tulips, no note. They were returned that afternoon, unopened. He stood at the edge of the hotel balcony, glass in hand, and stared down at the city he once ruled. She was here, and she didn't need him. Not his name, not his approval, not even his apology. Callie wasn't avoiding him to punish him. She simply didn't owe him her time. She'd opened the boutique not to make a point, but because it was time. She showed up every morning, worked the floor, reviewed orders, trained her new hires personally, and met every client with quiet attention. The staff noticed. "Most owners just check in once a week," one intern said. Callie smiled softly. "I already built something in the dark. Now I want to stay in the light." One afternoon, the front desk buzzed. "A man is here asking for you. Says it's personal." Callie stepped out from the office. Daxton stood just inside the door. Clean suit, polished shoes, slight pause in his eyes. She didn't flinch. "Why are you here?" she asked. "I saw the store. I saw everything," he said. "That doesn't answer my question." "I wanted to say, I'm sorry." She nodded. "You already said that." "In a voicemail, I wanted to say it in person." Callie turned slightly toward her assistant behind the desk. "Could you give us a minute?" The woman stepped away. Callie crossed her arms. "You're not used to people walking away from you, are you?" "I deserved that." She didn't soften. "You didn't just lie," she said. "You erased me, hid me, called it protection, then replaced me, publicly, so no, you don't get to walk in here and say it in person. I never wanted to lose you, but you did, and I didn't scream, I didn't expose you, I didn't try to make you pay." She stepped forward, voice calm. "I just left. And now, I'm busy." Daxton opened his mouth, then closed it. There was nothing else to say. Callie turned slightly. "If you need anything from the store, feel free to browse. But if not, please don't come back." She walked into the back office without another word. That night, she didn't cry. She didn't vent. She simply lay on her couch, feet up, glass of sparkling water in hand, and stared at the ceiling. The past no longer had weight. It had a name, and it had been removed. The office felt colder than usual. Daxton sat at the head of the boardroom table, suit perfect, jaw tight, voice quieter than normal. The screen in front of him displayed quarterly projections for a company that had once made him untouchable. But he wasn't listening. Not really. Because every tab open on his laptop said one thing: Callie Martin, feature in Vogue, Elle, and Business Weekly. Not gossip blogs. Real publications. Real interviews. Her name had flooded every major fashion conversation in the last 2 weeks. Not because of controversy, not because of a scandal, but because her story had substance. He hated how much that shook him. The interview in Vogue was sharp, measured, and clean. When asked about love, Callie had said only this: "Some people choose partners they can grow with. Others choose placeholders to buy time. I spent too long being someone's silence. Now I choose to be visible on my own terms." It wasn't bitter. It wasn't messy, but it was clear. Everyone who knew her past could read between the lines, including the investors in Daxton's own firm. One of them, quietly, asked over lunch, "You were married to her, weren't you?" Daxton didn't answer. He couldn't. By the end of the week, 2 major clients had redirected partnerships toward Callie's boutique group. They said it was about authentic branding and market freshness, but Daxton knew better. It was presence. Callie had it now. He used to be the reason she stayed in the background. Now, her absence was the reason people no longer saw him the same way. Meanwhile, Callie kept moving forward. She hadn't read the comments under the articles. She didn't need praise to validate her work, but she read the emails from young designers, women who said things like, "Thank you for showing we don't have to scream to be seen. I left a man who made me feel small after watching your story unfold. You made quiet power feel like enough." She read those. Twice. Lena texted her late one night. "He's folding. Saw him at a dinner. Looks like he hasn't slept." Callie replied only once. "Not my business anymore." And she meant it. Still, the news made its way to her. Daxton's board had forced an internal review. A major campaign had collapsed due to brand conflicts, partners concerned about reputation alignment. His personal image had become shaky, not because she attacked it, but because she left it alone. That silence had become its own truth. Ellis stopped by her store a few days later. He brought pastries. No flowers, no pressure, just a box with 2 handwritten labels. Top layer, cinnamon rolls. Bottom layer, extra sweet. "Like your voice. When you talk about your work." She raised an eyebrow. "Did you write that?" "I did. Were you nervous?" "Only about the pastries." She laughed. "And it wasn't guarded." She let him stay. They sat in the back office while she sketched. He watched, not overbearing, just curious. "You always knew you'd be here?" he asked. Callie shrugged. "I always wanted to be seen. I didn't know it'd look like this." He nodded. "It suits you." They didn't kiss. They didn't make promises. But they stayed in the quiet. And this time, she didn't feel erased in it. She felt safe. Daxton had never driven himself to anything in years. But that night, he took the wheel. No chauffeur, no assistant, no calls. He parked a block away from Callie's boutique, stood across the street, watching the lights through the glass windows. It was past closing, but the lights were still on. He saw her moving inside, stacking boxes, adjusting hangers, talking with one of her staff. She looked full, not busy, not tired, full. He realized, in that moment, the woman he once married had never needed more time to become something better. She had only needed him out of the way. Still, he crossed the street, knocked once, waited. Callie opened the door halfway. Again, no surprise in her face, just calm. "Daxton," she said. "I won't take long." She didn't move. "I've said a lot of things," he continued, "but I haven't asked the only thing I came to ask." She crossed her arms lightly. "And what's that? Is there a way back?" The air hung between them. He waited. She didn't blink, then said, without emotion, "No." He stepped back slightly. "You didn't even think about it." "I thought about it every day when I was still in that house," she replied. "And every night you didn't come home." Daxton swallowed hard. "I thought I was protecting you. You were protecting yourself. Your name, your image, your secrets. I didn't mean to." "You didn't have to mean to. You did." Her voice never rose. She wasn't angry. She was finished. "I'm not asking to go back to how it was," he said. "I'm asking for a chance to be different. And I'm not giving one." "Why not?" "Because I'm not yours to ask anymore." There was a time Daxton could have responded with charm, power, even guilt. But nothing worked now. She wasn't shaking. She wasn't second-guessing. She was simply sure. "I'm glad you came to ask," she said quietly. "It shows growth, that matters." He nodded once, eyes stinging slightly. "But growth doesn't mean restoration," she added. "It just means you'll hurt less when I close the door." And she did, gently, cleanly. The walk back to his car felt longer than it was. He didn't stop, didn't turn back, didn't try again. He'd asked. She'd answered. And this time, her silence wouldn't follow him. It would move on without him. The next day, Callie showed up early, unlocked the boutique, opened the windows, lit her favorite candle, played her playlist low. Everything felt right. Her staff arrived, greeting her with soft smiles and fresh energy. And when Ellis walked in just before lunch, holding 2 coffees and a book she once mentioned in passing, she didn't brace herself. She just smiled, because she was no longer waiting to be chosen. She had already chosen herself. The email came in at 8:14 a.m., flagged red by her assistant. Subject, official confirmation, National Women in Fashion feature. February cover. Callie read it twice. She didn't react. The news was huge. She would be the face of a major national campaign, featured alongside 3 global designers. Except Callie wasn't backed by a corporation or born into a legacy name. She built her name. She built it while no one was looking. And now, the industry couldn't look away. Her team buzzed with energy the moment the news broke. "You'll be on the February cover," Lena said, holding up her phone. "You." Next to 2 of the biggest names in the game. "I saw," Callie said calmly. "You don't sound excited." "I am. I'm just grateful, that's all." She wasn't being modest. She was being honest. The moment didn't change who she was. It didn't inflate her. She didn't need to scream about it. Because the louder her name got, the more she cherished the parts of herself that had once been ignored. The boutique saw a surge in foot traffic by midweek. Influencers showed up. Buyers scheduled visits. One retail director flew in from Paris, saying, "We were told your energy is different in person." Callie didn't pitch herself. She didn't perform. She walked them through her designs like they were chapters of a journal. "This line was created during a transition, not a heartbreak, a decision," she said. They nodded, taking notes. She was stillness in a fast world, and somehow that made people lean in more. Ellis came by on Friday evening. No appointment, no pressure. He walked in wearing a soft grey sweater, sleeves pushed up, a warm smile already there. Callie looked up from a box of inventory tags and tilted her head. "You again? You said I could stop by." "I did." He held up 2 containers, soba and spring rolls. "I didn't know what kind of Friday you were having. The kind where that looks perfect." She locked up early. They sat in the back office, sharing food straight from the containers, no plates. No one tried to impress anyone. "Big news, huh?" Ellis asked between bites. "It's surreal," she said. "Feels quiet, though. Not noisy like I thought." "That's because it belongs to you," he said. "You're not chasing it. You're walking beside it." She paused, chopsticks still mid-air. "That's a rare thing to say. I don't say things I don't mean." She studied him. He didn't avert his gaze. He didn't press closer. He didn't try to read her mind. He just stayed. She liked that. Later that night, he offered to walk her to her car. She didn't say yes. She just grabbed her bag and walked beside him, slowly. When they reached the sidewalk, he stopped and said nothing for a moment. She spoke first. "You don't ask many questions. You answer without needing them. What if I wanted to tell you something anyway?" He smiled. "Then, I'd listen." She hesitated. "Just a beat." "I don't do fast anymore," she said. "I'm not in a rush. I don't need fixing. I wouldn't try. I can be quiet for long stretches of time. I like silence." She tilted her head. "And if I'm difficult sometimes," he grinned, "then I'd probably find you more interesting." She exhaled softly through her nose, a sound close to a laugh. "Night, Ellis." He nodded once. "Night, Callie." She drove home feeling safe. Not butterflies, not fireworks. Something steadier. Something warm. That weekend, Callie did something she hadn't done in years. She stayed in. No work. No meetings. She cooked herself dinner from scratch. Chicken, roasted vegetables and rice. She lit candles in every room. She put on a jazz playlist she used to love and left her phone on silent. For the first time, her home felt like a space where nothing was waiting to interrupt her. No lies, no apologies, no empty promises wrapped in charm. Just a room filled with the scent of garlic and thyme. Just her, whole, safe. The following week, the magazine sent their crew for the first round of interviews and test shots. The stylist offered her 12 different looks. Callie picked 2. "I don't want the spread to look like a rebrand," she said. "I want it to look like me." Her team gave her full control. She chose neutral palettes, simple jewelry, light makeup. She wore a white blouse from her first collection, the one Daxton once told her was too soft for press. Now it was going on the cover of a national magazine. During the interview, the journalist asked the question that came eventually to all women who walked through fire and still smiled. "What kept you from staying in a life that wasn't serving you?" Callie sat still for a moment, then answered, without performance, "I realized I was still loving someone who didn't think I was worth introducing to the world. That kind of silence eats you quietly. I chose to stop feeding it." The interviewer blinked, then nodded. The room stayed quiet for a long moment before the next question. The February issue dropped on a Tuesday. By noon, her name was trending. Callie Martin, How to Build in Silence and Rise with Purpose. The photo was simple, just her standing in front of a blank canvas in her boutique, sleeves rolled, fingers lightly touching fabric. No flash, no drama, just presence. That was what people loved most. She didn't try to sell them an image. She gave them proof that healing could look like soft power. Social media filled with her quotes. "Not everyone who leaves is angry. Some of us just don't want to stay unchosen. My silence wasn't weakness. It was me waiting for the right time to speak." And the one that went viral in under an hour. "I used to think being seen meant being loud, but sometimes the most unforgettable woman is the one who chose herself quietly." The comments flooded in. "This article just healed a piece of me I didn't know was still hurting. Her story reminds me I don't need revenge to win. I hope she knows she's inspiring a generation of women to stop waiting." Callie read the comments slowly, not to feel bigger, but to remember how many people needed this kind of story to breathe easier. The boutique was overwhelmed. Clients flew in from Dallas, Miami, even Toronto. The website crashed once. 3 dresses sold out in 2 hours, but none of that made her feel the way Ellis did when he walked in at the end of the day. No cameras, no photos. He handed her a worn paperback. "Found this at a used bookstore. Thought it matched your kind of quiet." She took it. No words, just warmth rising in her chest. They walked that night. No destination, no rush. Just sidewalks, city lights, and the comfortable rhythm of shoes against pavement. At one point, she paused beside a fountain. "It's strange," she said. "What is?" "Being visible, everywhere. And still feeling calm. That's because you didn't chase the spotlight," he said. "You just stopped hiding." She looked at him. Not past him, not around him. At him. "You don't flinch when I talk about hard things. I've lived through a few. You don't ask me to shrink. You'd scare me if you did." She smiled. They kept walking. No one tried to name what was forming between them, but it was there, in the pauses, in the quiet, in the fact that neither one needed the other to fill the silence. By the end of the week, her publicist had calls from 3 major talk shows. Callie declined all of them. "I said what I needed to say. Now I want to go back to building." The team didn't push, because they understood now this was never about fame. It was about freedom. On Sunday, Ellis invited her to a small non-profit dinner. Nothing fancy, no gala, no black tie. Just a group of people who worked in warehouses all week to get supplies to shelters. Callie wore a soft blue dress with flat shoes. No one asked who she was until dessert, when one of the women leaned in and said, "You look familiar. Were you in that magazine?" Callie smiled. "Yes," the woman nodded. "I liked what you said about not needing to be loud to be strong. That felt like me." That night, Callie and Ellis sat on a bench under soft string lights. The air smelled like roasted garlic and bread. Ellis tilted his head. "I've never been with someone who knew when not to speak." Callie looked at him. "I've never been with someone who didn't need me to shrink." He touched her hand lightly, didn't move closer, didn't try to turn the moment into something more than it was. He simply stayed, and she let him. That night, when she got home, she took off her shoes and stood barefoot in her entryway for a long time. Not because she was overwhelmed, but because she finally felt it, settled, whole. There were no headlines she needed to read, no messages she needed to wait for, no doors she needed to keep unlocked just in case someone came back. She was in her own home, her own name, her own peace. And for the first time in years, she didn't feel like something was missing. She felt full. The message came through on a Tuesday morning. Short, final. "Don't contact me again. I don't share." Daxton stared at the screen, then at the wedding band box on his desk, still unopened. She had found out. Sabrina, the woman he paraded at the gala, had seen the magazine. She wasn't stupid. She read the lines, traced the silence, connected the dates. By the time he tried to explain, she was already gone. One of her assistants had sent back all the jewelry, letters, and the luxury travel plans he'd made for the wedding. All returned. No drama, just rejection. Clean, sharp, undeniable. He walked into the office that afternoon to find his assistant waiting. The investors pulled back from the Blackwater proposal. "Said your image is a liability." Daxton paused. "They used that word?" "Not directly, but it was clear." He nodded, said nothing. He walked into his glass-walled office and stood still. The silence felt louder than it used to. He checked the industry alerts again. Callie Martin featured in 3 more national outlets. Collaboration in development with a legacy department store. Demand doubling. He hadn't said her name aloud in over a month, but she hadn't stopped being everywhere. Sabrina had called him once, before the final message. Her voice was calm. "I knew something didn't add up. I just didn't know how far it went." He stayed quiet. "You said she was someone you used to see. You didn't say she was your wife." "That was complicated." "No, that was cowardly." He exhaled. "I didn't think she'd go public." Sabrina laughed bitterly. "She didn't. She went forward. You're the one left behind." She hung up. That was the last time he heard her voice. At night, Daxton sat in his penthouse with the TV off. No calls, no visitors. He thought about calling Callie again, but the last time, she didn't pick up. And maybe, just maybe, he understood why now. Because silence wasn't passive. It was final. While his world shifted quietly downward, Callie's moved without interruption. She launched her capsule collection with precise grace. The photos were raw and real, models of all shapes and ages, shot in natural light, no filters. When asked why she didn't glam up the campaign, she said simply, "Real life is enough." The campaign slogan read, "Soft isn't small. Quiet isn't invisible. Power doesn't have to shout." It was printed on canvas totes, printed on the tags, printed into the minds of every woman who'd ever been told she had to be loud to matter. Ellis was at her side during the launch, but never in front. He helped move boxes, set up lighting, held the door open during interviews, then faded into the background without complaint. When a reporter asked, "Is this your partner?" Callie smiled and said, "He's part of what makes this feel safe." He didn't need a title. He had her trust, and that was more than enough. That week, Ellis invited her to a small bookstore event he helped organize for foster families and youth. She came in a simple wrap dress, tied loose, flats on her feet, minimal makeup, no spotlight, no cameras, just warmth. She helped hand out books. She stayed for story time. At one point, a girl no older than 12 whispered to her, "You look like the lady in the magazine." Callie smiled gently. "That's me." The girl leaned in. "My mom said you walked away from a rich man and still ended up winning." Callie knelt beside her. "I didn't walk away to win." Then Why? Because staying would have made me lose myself. The girl blinked, then nodded slowly. I hope I remember that when I'm big. Daxton stopped showing up at his office. Not because he couldn't, but because there was nothing left to fix. The board took over the firm's major decisions. His name was still on the door, but he no longer held the room when he walked in. Meetings happened without him. Calls went unanswered. People no longer paused when he entered a space. They barely looked up. For a man who once built his world with presence, invisibility came fast. And no one sent flowers when it arrived. He spent his mornings alone, staring at news feeds, watching headlines pass with Callie's name in bold. He saw one quote repeat often. She didn't get revenge, she got clarity. He read it at least 10 times. Each time it struck the same chord. She had walked away with nothing. No press, no payout, no social attack. But in walking away, she took everything that mattered. Not money, but narrative. He once owned the story. Now she was the story. Meanwhile, Callie's life wasn't explosive, it was consistent. She stayed rooted. She still ran the floor of her boutique, still packed orders sometimes, still showed up early on Mondays before the staff arrived to light her favorite candle and open the blinds herself. Success didn't make her untouchable, it made her sure. And Ellis never made her feel like she had to be more than who she was on quiet days. They spent more time together now. Still no titles. Still no pressure. But a rhythm had formed. He'd stop by after meetings, sometimes with food, sometimes with a question, sometimes with nothing but the need to sit nearby. She let him. And for once in her life, she didn't feel like she had to earn presence with performance. One night, she invited him over. It wasn't planned. She had been working late, forgot to eat and texted, "Are you close?" He was. 15 minutes later, he showed up with grilled vegetables, rice, and 2 cans of sparkling water. They didn't talk much during dinner. She was tired. He noticed. After they ate, he washed the dishes while she sat barefoot on the living room rug. She didn't stop him. She didn't apologize. And he didn't comment on it. He just moved through the space like he had no desire to impress, only to respect. That, more than any grand gesture, made her feel something shift. Later, he sat beside her on the rug. Close, not crowding. Her eyes were half closed. She wasn't checking her phone, wasn't planning the next day, wasn't waiting for him to fill the silence. She was simply still and safe. He looked at her, then asked softly, "What scares you the most now?" She didn't hesitate. Being asked to go backward in disguise. He nodded. "That won't happen here," he said. She looked at him, not with hope, with relief. When he left that night, he didn't linger at the door. No long stares, no hidden questions. He just said, "Thanks for trusting me with your quiet," and walked to his car. She closed the door slowly and stood there, one hand still on the knob. For the first time in years, a man had entered her home and left her more whole, not less. No take, no test, no transaction, only time, only care, only space. Daxton, across the city, sat alone in a high-rise suite, surrounded by things that no longer meant anything. He hadn't touched the wedding band box in days. He didn't unpack it, didn't toss it. He just left it on the nightstand, a reminder of the moment that never came. The silence in the room wasn't peace. It was absence. And it echoed louder than Callie ever had. Sometimes, the loudest regret comes from realizing you were never needed to begin with. Have you ever watched someone heal without you and found peace in someone else? Share your thoughts below. Like this video if you believe quiet love is the strongest kind. And don't forget to subscribe to Mr. Charles Stories for more real emotional stories that leave a mark. The bell above the boutique door chimed at 3:17 p.m. Callie was helping a client try on a blazer when she glanced up and saw him, Daxton. He didn't look like the man from her memories. He looked smaller. No assistant, no phone in hand, no presence trailing behind him. He wore a dark jacket, unbuttoned, face clean-shaven, eyes searching. Callie met his gaze, but her hand didn't shake. She finished pinning the sleeve and nodded toward her assistant. "Could you take over for a moment?" She walked slowly toward the front counter. Daxton didn't speak yet. He just looked around. "I remember when this used to be your dream," he said. "It still is," she replied. He nodded once. "I thought I'd hate seeing your name everywhere, but it feels earned. It is." A pause. He stepped forward. "I came to say goodbye." Callie blinked once. "That assumes I'm still listening." He gave a slow breath. "I deserve that. I'm not angry, Daxton. I'm not holding space for your regret." "I know. That's what makes it worse." The boutique door opened again. Ellis. He walked in holding a package, head tilted, eyes landing on Daxton instantly. He didn't flinch, didn't blink. He simply looked from Callie to the man beside her. Callie turned. "Ellis, this is Daxton." Ellis nodded once. Daxton stepped forward, trying to find footing in a room where no one was performing for him. "Are you the new man?" Daxton asked, the edge in his voice unpolished. Ellis didn't smile. He didn't defend. He just set the package down gently and said, "I'm the man who shows up." Callie's eyes didn't move. Daxton cleared his throat, but no one rushed to ease the tension. "I didn't come to fight," Daxton muttered. "Then maybe you should leave," Ellis said plainly. It wasn't threatening. It was protective and clear. Callie didn't intervene, because this wasn't about two men. This was about boundaries, and she didn't need to rescue anyone. Daxton turned back to her. "I still think about you." "I don't," she replied. She didn't say it cruelly, just truthfully. Ellis stayed behind the counter, silent but steady. Daxton gave a small nod, and for once didn't try to win. He walked out quietly. This time, no words were left behind. Callie stood still for a moment, then turned. Ellis was already walking into the back room with the delivery. She followed. "Thank you," she said softly. He turned. "For what?" "For not asking me to explain that." He smiled gently. "You don't owe me a single story." She stepped closer. For once, not needing to ask for safety. She already had it. That evening, the boutique closed early. Nothing special on the calendar, just a quiet Thursday. Callie stood by the window folding a long linen wrap top, her mind somewhere between calm and memory. The bell had stopped chiming. The lights were dim. Ellis leaned against the counter, not watching her, just being there. He wasn't a shadow. He was presence. Callie finally broke the silence. "You handled him better than I expected." "I didn't handle him," Ellis said. "I protected what you built." She looked up at him, not as someone unsure, but as someone grateful. Then, almost reluctantly, she said, "He used to say protecting me meant hiding me. Said it was for my peace." Ellis nodded. "But peace doesn't live in the dark." Callie closed the wrap top and placed it on the shelf. "I stayed quiet for a long time because I didn't want to lose the little bit I thought I had. And now, I'm not afraid to lose anything if it costs me." Ellis didn't fill the silence that followed. Instead, he stepped forward, slower than usual, until they stood close. Enough for her to feel it, his breath, his steadiness, his weight. "I want you to know something," he said softly. She tilted her head. "I've never seen you as something to fix, or guard, or shape." Her brow lifted slightly, just enough to hold space. "I see you as already whole," he finished. "I'm just grateful you let me witness it." Callie didn't rush forward, didn't leap into his arms. She took one small step, closed the space, then lifted her hand and touched his collar. Soft, still. "You're the first person I've been around where I don't have to brace for impact." Ellis looked at her, eyes never flinching. "I would never make you flinch." They didn't kiss right away. They didn't need to. Their silence wasn't a delay. It was a decision. When she finally leaned forward and rested her forehead against his, they both let out the breath they hadn't realized they were holding. And when his hand touched her waist, it wasn't to pull her in. It was to stay. She whispered into that small, safe space between them. I don't need promises. I just need someone who doesn't leave when things get soft. I'm not going anywhere." And she believed him. They didn't sleep together that night. Callie invited him over. They made a late dinner together. Nothing fancy, just pasta and garlic bread, and they ate on the floor of her living room with no music, no TV, just the occasional clink of forks against plates. When she curled into the couch later, he sat beside her. Close, but not pressing. She leaned into him. He stayed. No ask, no chase, just presence. She fell asleep with her head on his shoulder. For the first time in years, sleep didn't come with worry or tension or second-guessing. It came with breath, with quiet, with trust. The next morning, she woke to the smell of coffee and eggs. Ellis stood in the kitchen barefoot, hair slightly messy, humming something soft under his breath. He didn't notice her watching him at first. She leaned on the doorframe and just took in the moment. It wasn't loud. It wasn't fireworks. But it felt like everything she never had, until now. When he turned and caught her looking, he smiled. "Hope you like eggs." She stepped forward. "I like peace." He held her gaze. "You'll never have to trade one for the other again." The envelope was heavy, not because of what it carried, but because of what it meant. Callie opened it slowly, seated at the back table of her boutique with Ellis across from her, casually peeling an orange. She unfolded the letter. Read it once, then again. Her hand didn't tremble, but her chest tightened. She passed the paper across the table without a word. Ellis read the header aloud. National Woman of the Year in Design, honoring silent leadership and impact. He looked up, eyes soft but wide. "You okay?" She nodded. "I'm surprised." "You shouldn't be. I didn't apply. They chose you." She breathed in, then out, then smiled, slow, small, honest. "I used to wonder if my name would ever be enough." Ellis smiled back. "Now it is." And it always was. The announcement made headlines, national television, industry forums. Celebrity designers reposted her speech quotes from past interviews. And once again, Callie's story became more than a rise. It became a movement. Women in quiet roles, girls in school, underdogs in business. They all pointed to her as proof that you don't need to break glass to be heard. Sometimes you just need to walk out, take your silence with you, and build. Daxton read the announcement from the cold light of his office. He hadn't been invited to the ceremony. He wasn't on the guest list. No one asked for his version of the story. He clicked through the photos online anyway. There she was, standing tall in a tailored suit from her own line. Hair simple, eyes calm. She held no trophy. She didn't need one. The award was symbolic, not showy. Recognition, not noise. And somehow that cut deeper than any public rejection. Because there she was, in the spotlight he never let her stand in. Alone, but not lonely. Seen, and stronger than ever. At the ceremony, Callie sat beside Lena and her investor-turned-partner. Her team filled a nearby row. Her aunt, flown in from Vermont, held her hand for most of the night. Ellis didn't sit up front. He stood quietly off to the side, near the production crew, arms folded, pride in his posture, but not in a performative way. When Callie stepped up to accept the award, the room stood for her. But Ellis didn't clap the loudest. He smiled the softest, because he knew the truth behind the moment. She wasn't just being honored for building something new. She was being honored for walking away before someone else destroyed her fire. Callie kept her speech short. No tears, no names, just this. "I didn't grow up thinking I had to be loud to matter, but I grew up watching people who disappeared when they stopped being useful. I've learned that usefulness is not worth more than wholeness. I'm not standing here because I fought. I'm here because I finally stopped. I stopped asking for room. I stopped waiting to be chosen. I stopped holding silence for people who wouldn't speak mine in public. And I started living for what was true. Thank you for seeing me now that I see myself." The applause was long, but she didn't linger. She stepped off the stage and walked straight toward Ellis. He didn't say a word. She didn't need him to. She simply reached for his hand, and he gave it to her. Fully, steady, and with no need for the world to notice. Later that night, Daxton sat alone at his kitchen table. The television buzzed in the background. He poured a drink, but didn't sip. He didn't curse her, didn't hate her, didn't wish her name gone from the headlines. Because now, he understood, he hadn't lost her to another man. He lost her to her own peace. And there was no competing with that. The charity auction was supposed to be low profile. Daxton hadn't wanted to go, but one of his few remaining board contacts insisted. Remind people you're still involved, still steady, still standing. But Daxton didn't feel steady, and he wasn't sure if standing mattered when no one cared anymore. He walked into the hotel ballroom with his tie loose, jacket clean, but his presence didn't turn heads like it used to. People nodded, glanced, moved on. Halfway through the evening, as he stood by the drink station pretending to check emails, a familiar voice spoke from behind him. "You look like a man who finally figured out the room isn't his anymore." He turned. Lena, Callie's friend, her early supporter, the one he'd once dismissed as too opinionated. Daxton straightened. "Didn't expect to see you here. I almost didn't come. But something told me you'd show up." Her voice wasn't sharp. It was even, measured, final. He tried to smile. "You're not here to gloat, are you?" "No. I'm here to confirm something, which is that you finally know what you lost." He didn't answer. She stepped closer. "You thought hiding her made you powerful. It made you forgettable." His brow tightened. "That's not what I meant to do, but that's what you did." He looked down. "I never meant to hurt her." Lena didn't blink. "You didn't need to mean it. You just needed to look away long enough for someone else to see her." Later that night, Daxton drove home in silence. No music, no phone calls. He parked in his private garage, sat for a full 10 minutes before exiting the car. Inside, the penthouse was immaculate, soulless. He poured a glass of something expensive and stood at the window. Across the city, lights blinked in towers that no longer felt like his. And somewhere out there, the woman who once waited quietly in his shadow was now being celebrated for stepping into her own. He whispered aloud to no one. She was always the whole story. Across town, Callie walked barefoot across her living room, one hand holding a glass of cold water, the other adjusting the volume on her speaker. The music was soft, soulful. Ellis was on her couch, one arm resting on the cushion where she'd been sitting before she got up to stretch. He watched her, not with hunger, but ease. She turned toward him, finally letting the smile she'd been holding back all day rise to the surface. "I forgot what this felt like," she said. "What?" "Joy. Not relief, not survival. Just joy." He nodded. "It looks good on you." She walked over, sat beside him again, and leaned into his chest. Not to escape, but to rest. They talked about nothing for a while. Then something. Then silence. Not awkward, just understood. Eventually she asked, "Do you think he regrets it?" Ellis knew who she meant. "I think he regrets losing what he never fully saw." She nodded. "I don't want revenge. You didn't take any, I know, but I don't want to carry it either." "You're not. You're walking forward." Callie smiled faintly. "And you?" "I'm right here." She kissed him that night. No hesitation, no tests. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't burning. It was real, slow, warm, deep. She didn't shake when his hand slid behind her neck. She didn't flinch when he leaned in fully. She wasn't bracing for betrayal. Because this time, love wasn't a performance. It was peace. And her body didn't feel like a battleground anymore. It felt like hers. The cottage sat on the edge of Big Sur. Stone exterior. Small porch. No reception. Callie had booked it weeks ago, unsure if she'd actually go. She hadn't planned to bring anyone. But when Ellis offered to drive, and didn't ask who else was coming, she said yes without overthinking it. Now, they were here. No boutiques, no clients, no calls. Just the hum of ocean wind through pines and a worn wood deck overlooking cliffs. Ellis dropped her overnight bag by the front door and stretched. "Smells like pine and firewood. Better than perfume and camera flashes," Callie murmured. He looked at her. She smiled softly. "I needed this." Inside, the cottage was warm and simple. One bedroom, one bathroom, and a fireplace that didn't try too hard to be modern. Callie kicked off her boots and sank onto the couch. Ellis lit the fireplace, then joined her, their legs brushing naturally. No performance, no space held for explanation. They ate dinner from a small basket provided by the host. Soup in glass containers, fresh bread, 2 apples. Callie never asked where Ellis got the bottle of wine. He just poured it, handed her a glass, sat close. That night, they didn't make love. They made time. He massaged her feet while she talked about her aunt's letters from childhood. She rubbed his back while he told her what it felt like to lose a sibling early and never talk about it again. There were no tears, no rush to heal, just presence. When they finally lay down, she slept on his chest. The rhythm of his breath, the low crackle of firelight, it held her steady all night. No dreams, just rest. The next morning, Callie stepped outside alone with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. The cliffs were misted over. Birds flew low. She breathed in, then out, the weight of her past no longer pulling her forward. Ellis stepped out behind her, handed her a mug of hot tea. Neither of them spoke, not for 5 full minutes. And yet, it was the most conversation she'd ever had at sunrise. They took a walk late that morning, down the bluff, through wet trails, past old oaks. At one point, she stopped and turned to him. "Why didn't you ever ask for more?" Ellis didn't blink. "Because what you gave was already enough." She nodded slowly. "Then, I think I'm ready to give more." He smiled. "Then take your time." "I'm not going anywhere." They spent the afternoon reading on the porch. Callie tucked her legs under his, a book open but unread in her lap. He traced circles on the side of her ankle absently. She never moved away. When a light drizzle began to fall, she whispered, "Let's not go back tomorrow. We don't have to, but life will keep calling." He kissed her temple, "And we'll keep choosing where to answer." That night, they undressed slowly, not for performance, not for power, but for presence. Callie wasn't nervous. She wasn't proving anything. She was just home. And when Ellis laid her down gently, touched her like he was thankful to be allowed near her, she didn't hide. She stayed open, raw, soft. He kissed her neck like it mattered, held her like she wasn't something to win, but something to witness. And when she fell asleep in his arms, there was no question left in her heart. She didn't need noise. She didn't need control. She didn't need validation. She just needed real. And she had it. The drive back from Big Sur was quiet in all the right ways. No playlists, no podcasts, just windows cracked, the wind slipping through, and Ellis's hand resting gently on Callie's knee. They didn't talk about the weekend. They didn't need to. It was in the way she looked at him now, open, unguarded. It was in the way he no longer waited to be let in. She'd already opened the door, and left it that way. When they returned to the boutique, the staff buzzed with energy. A new collaboration offer had landed. A top-tier beauty brand wanted to merge a capsule fashion release with a skincare launch, featuring Callie as the face of both. Her assistant handed her the proposal. "It's everything you said you wanted last year. Visibility, integrity, full creative control." Callie flipped through the pitch. The terms were generous. The campaign would be international. But it was the final slide that made her pause. A tagline, "From silence to spotlight." She stared at it. Later that day, her team gathered in the conference room, waiting for her answer. Callie stood at the head of the table, calm, focused. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't rehearse. "I'm not signing on." The team blinked. "But it's a perfect alignment," one said. "It's not my voice," Callie replied. "I didn't come from silence. I came from being unheard." So, what should the story be? Callie looked across the room at a young intern who had joined just 2 weeks ago, shy, smart, and always taking notes. She turned back to the group. The story, she said clearly, isn't about what I escaped. It's about what I built after. She rewrote the campaign pitch herself. New title, Built from Stillness. New copy, Some of us don't rise from noise. We rise from grounding, from clarity, from knowing we were always enough. Long before they noticed. When the campaign team received it, the lead rep called her personally. Most people build brands around fire. You built yours around breath. Callie smiled. Then I'm glad you're still listening. At home, Ellis read the new copy before it went live. He didn't edit it. He didn't offer suggestions. He read it slowly, then looked up. This feels like you. Callie sat beside him on the couch. It is. Do you want the world to see this much of you? I'm not hiding anymore. Even the soft parts. Especially those. He leaned in, not to claim her, just to hold the space with her. That night, they shared a meal on the balcony. The city below buzzed. But up there, all Callie could hear was the clink of a glass, the scrape of a fork, and the quiet knowing in Ellis's voice when he said, "You don't have to carry it all anymore." And she finally believed it. The boutique was quiet that morning, a rare pause between releases. Callie stood by the window with a clipboard in hand, sunlight warming her arms as she reviewed staff schedules. Her phone was face down. Her mind was still. Ellis had left early that morning with a kiss on her temple and the words, "I'll see you when the noise settles." She liked how he never filled the silence. He just waited in it. Her assistant walked in holding a small white envelope. No return address. Hand delivered. Callie took it without flinching. The handwriting on the front was familiar, slanted, careful. She didn't rush to open it. She finished her notes, refilled her tea, then sat in the small office behind the curtain. She opened the card slowly. No anger, no hesitation, just curiosity. Inside, "You were never the backup. I just didn't know how to be brave enough to stand beside someone like you. You deserved public love. You built it on your own. Thank you for doing what I never could. D." She read it twice. No sting, no pause. Just truth. And closure she never needed, but now appreciated. She folded the card, placed it in a drawer with others from her past. Family, old clients, even her aunt's scribbled birthday notes. Not forgotten. Just filed. And then she returned to her day. That evening, she told Ellis about the note. He didn't ask to read it. He didn't press. He just nodded once and said, "You good?" Callie smiled. Better than. Then she set the table for dinner and asked about his day, because that's where her life lived now. In the after, in the safe, in the moments that didn't need to be earned through pain. The boutique closed early that Friday, not for an emergency, not for a launch, just because she felt like going home before the sun set. Callie walked through her front door barefoot, carrying a small paper bag of fresh pasta and herbs she picked up from the market down the street. Ellis wasn't home yet. The place was quiet, warm, softly lit by what little evening light the windows caught. She left her bag on the counter, tied her hair up, turned on music, just piano this time. Then she opened a drawer and pulled out a journal she hadn't touched in over a year. A soft brown cover, no title. She hadn't written since the day she moved out of the mansion. But now, she wanted to. Not to explain, not to vent, just to document. She sat on the couch with a throw over her legs, pen resting in hand. Then, slowly, she began. "Dear me, you didn't fail. You waited. You trusted. You hoped. And when the time came, you left with grace. They didn't believe you were strong because you were quiet. But you were never weak. You were learning. And now, you're no longer waiting to be seen. You see yourself. And you chose love again, but not the kind that dims you. This time, it shows up. This time, it stays. This time, it doesn't punish you for being soft. I'm proud of you. I love you. Don't forget this. Not when things get busy, Not when praise gets loud. Stay here. Stay steady. Stay yours. Me. She set the journal down, pressed her palm over the last words, closed her eyes, and smiled. Ellis walked in 20 minutes later. He didn't knock, didn't call out. He just stepped into the room, saw her on the couch, and sat beside her. His shirt smelled like wind. His skin was warm from the air. He looked at her and asked, "You write something good?" She nodded. "Just a note to remind myself who I am." He reached for her hand, held it loosely, then said the thing that made her heart still completely, "You don't ever have to explain who you are again." That night, they ate late, laughed softly, curled up on the couch until their breathing synced. No big ending, no spotlight, just presence. Callie rested her head against Ellis's chest, and in the quiet, she finally believed it. She was no longer anyone's secret. She was her own. And that would always be enough. It's peace. It's choosing yourself, softly, fully, and without asking again. If you've ever walked away quietly and built something better, drop a comment below. Tell us what choosing you looked like. Like this video if you believe love should never require shrinking. And don't forget to subscribe to Mr. Charles Stories, where healing, hope, and quiet strength always get the final word.